The rain stung my face like 1,000 tiny needles. But I didn't stop running. New York's streets blurred past neon lights smearing into the night, horns screaming as I dodged taxis. I had to get away before he found me, before his voice could pull me back into a life I didn't deserve. My name is Eli Carter, and I'm nobody. A barista with $47 in my bank account, a chipped front tooth from a fight I didn't start, and a heart that's been broken more times than I can count. But for one impossible summer, I was his Asher Langston, the billionaire heir who threw it all away for me. And I loved him so fiercely it scared me. That's why I'm running now. My sneakers slapping wet pavement, my chest burning with every breath. Because love like that doesn't just save you, it destroys you. It started 3 months ago in a cramped Brooklyn coffee shop. I was behind the counter, steaming milk for a latte, when he walked in. Asher wasn't like the usual suits who barked orders without looking up from their phones. He was different. Tall, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like a storm over the Atlantic. He smiled a real smile. Not the polished kind Anne asked my name. Not my order name, scrawled on a cup, but my actual name. I told him, blushing like an idiot, and he said it back like it was something precious. Eli, he murmured, testing it, and my heart did a stupid flip. He came back every day after that. Same order, black coffee. No sugar. Same smile, warm, disarming. Like he saw something in me I'd never seen in myself. We talked small stuff at first. Music. Movies. The way the city smelled like asphalt and dreams after a summer rain. Then deeper things. My mom, who raised me alone until cancer took her when I was 16. His dad, a cold, controlling man who built a tech empire but couldn't build a relationship with his son. Asher was 26, like me, but his world was penthouses and private jets, while mine was shared apartments and overdue bills. One night, he stayed until closing. I was mopping the floor, and he just helped. A billionaire, sleeves rolled up, pushing a mop like it was nothing. You don't have to do this, I said, embarrassed. He grinned, leaning on the handle. Maybe I want to. That was the first time I felt it pull, like gravity, drawing me to him. Dangerous. Impossible. We kissed a week later, outside the shop, under a street lamp that flickered like it knew we were stealing time. His lips were soft, urgent, and I forgot how to breathe. Your trouble, Eli Carter, he whispered against my mouth, and I laughed because he was right. But I didn't know then how much trouble he was, how he'd upend his life for me, how I'd break his heart to save him. By the end of June, we were inseparable. Asher would sneak away from board meetings to meet me in Central Park, where we'd lie on the grass, his head on my chest, talking about nothing and everything. He told me about the pressure his father's expectations, the empire he was supposed to inherit. I don't want it, he said one day, his voice fierce. I want you. I laughed it off, thinking he was joking. Billionaires don't walk away from billions. But Asher wasn't joking. His father found out. Of course he did. Charles Langston, CEO of Langston Tech, didn't build a fortune by missing details. One night, Asher showed up at my apartment, his face pale, eyes wild. He knows, he said, pacing. He's cutting me off unless I end this. I froze, my stomach twisting. And what? I asked, though I knew. Asher stopped, grabbed my hands. Us. But I won't. I told him I'm done. My heart pounded. Done. with his family, his fortune. For me, you can't, I said, pulling away. Asher, that's your life. He shook his head, stepping closer. You're my life. And God help me. I believed him. We made love that night, desperate and raw, like we could hold back the world if we held each other tight enough. But the world always wins. The next day, the headlines hit, Billionaire heir renounces fortune for barista boyfriend. My phone buzzed with notifications, strangers calling me a gold digger, a homewrecker. Asher's father sent a lawyer to my apartment with a check, $5 million to disappear. I tore it up, but the damage was done. The city was suffocating us. Asher was losing everything, and I was the reason. I started pulling away. Not because I didn't love him, God. I loved him more than I'd ever loved anything, but because I couldn't let him drown for me. He deserved better than a life of regret, of whispers and judgment. So I made a plan. I'd leave. Vanish. Let him hate me if it meant he could have his life back. That's why I'm running now. Through the rain. My backpack heavy with the few things I own. I've got a bus ticket to nowhere. A new name. A new start. But every step feels like betrayal. I see his face, those storm gray eyes. That smile, and I want to turn back. I want to run to him. Tell him I'm sorry. That I love him. But I can't. Because love isn't enough when the world's against you. And I'm not worth $1 billion. I didn't sleep that night. The bus station was a haze of flickering lights and stale coffee. The kind of place where dreams go to die. I sat on a hard plastic seat, clutching my ticket to Chicago, my heart screaming at me to go back to Asher. But I couldn't. Not after what I'd done. I'd left a note on his apartment counter, scrawled in my messy handwriting, "I'm sorry. You're better off without me." I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. He'd know it was me. The same way he always knew when I was hiding something. Like the time I lied about being fine after a customer screamed at me for a wrong order. And Asher just pulled me into his arms, saying nothing, letting me break against him. I'd never had that before, someone who saw me. Really saw me. And now I was throwing it away. The bus ride was long. The kind of long that makes you question every choice you've ever made. I stared out the window at fields blurring into nothingness, replaying every moment with Asher. The way he'd laugh when I teased him about his awful taste in music-smooth jazz. Really. The way he'd trace my scars. The ones from fights and bad decisions. And call them beautiful. The way he'd whisper my name in the dark. Like a prayer. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, trying to drown out the ache. Chicago was loud, gray, unfamiliar. I found a cheap motel, the kind with stains on the walls and a clerk who didn't ask questions. I paid cash, using the last of my savings, and collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. My phone was off. SIM card snapped in half. No way for him to find me. No way for me to weaken and call him. But God, I wanted to. I wanted to hear his voice. To tell him I didn't mean it. That I was scared not of him, but of what loving him meant. Back in New York, Asher must have found the note by now. I imagined him reading it. His face crumpling. Those storm gray eyes filling with hurt. Would he hate me? Search for me? Or would he do what I hope, move on? Reclaim his life? His fortune? I told myself it was better this way. But the lie tasted bitter. Days bled into weeks. I got a job at a diner, washing dishes in a steamy backroom that smelled of grease and regret. I kept my head down. My story simple, just a guy starting over. But Asher was everywhere, in the curve of a stranger's jaw, the sound of a laugh in a crowded street. I'd catch myself turning, expecting him, only to remember he was gone. Or I was. One night, after a double shift, I found a bar. Not a fancy one like Asher would have liked, with velvet ropes and overpriced cocktails, but a dive with sticky floors and a jukebox that only played Springsteen. I was on my third beer when I saw him, not Asher, but close enough. Same sharp cheekbones, same easy confidence. He caught my eye, smiled, and for a moment, I let myself pretend. We talked. His name was Luke, a grad student with a quick laugh and a habit of leaning too close. He wasn't Asher, but he was kind, and I was lonely. We went out a few times. Coffee. A walk by the lake. He kissed me one night, and I let him, chasing a ghost. But it wasn't the same. Luke's touch didn't burn like Asher's, didn't make my heart race or my world tilt. I pulled away, mumbling apologies, and he looked at me with pity. Whoever he is, Luke said, he's lucky. I didn't correct him. Asher wasn't lucky. He was cursed with me. I started writing letters I'd never send. Pages of them, stuffed under the motel mattress. I'm sorry, Asher. I didn't know how to stay. I didn't know how to be enough. They were messy, raw, full of things I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about the night we danced in his penthouse, barefoot, to a song I can't remember, only the feel of his hands on my waist. I wrote about the fear mine, not as that I'd ruin him. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the words blurred with tears. Then, one day, I saw the news. A headline on a diner TV, Langston Air returns to family business. My heart stopped. There was Asher, in a suit that probably cost more than my rent, shaking hands with his father. He looked fine, polished, like the man he was supposed to be. Not the one who mopped coffee shop floors with me. Not the one who kissed me like I was his oxygen. I should have been relieved. I'd done it, set him free. So why did it feel like I'd lost everything? That night, I went back to the bar. Luke was there, and I let him buy me a drink. I let him talk, let his voice drown out the noise in my head. But when he reached for my hand, I flinched. I can't, I said, and he nodded, like he'd known all along. I left, the Chicago wind cutting through my jacket, and I wondered if I'd ever stop running. The Chicago winter hit like a fist, all biting wind and gray slush that soaked through my sneakers. I'd been here 3 months, scraping by, telling myself I was moving on. But every night, I'd lie awake, haunted by Asher's face, wondering if he'd forgotten me. Work at the diner kept me sane. The routine scrub, rinse, repeat was mind-numbing, but it was safe. No one asked questions, not even Maria, the line cook who slipped me extra food when she thought I wasn't looking. I'd smile, say thanks, and keep my head down. But the letters under my mattress were piling up, each one heavier than the last. I wrote to Asher about the little things, how the diner's coffee tasted like dishwater, how the city's lights never felt as alive as New York's. I wrote about the big things too, how I missed him, how I hated myself for leaving, how I didn't know how to fix it. One morning, I was wiping down tables when the TV flickered to a news segment. Another Langston Tech press conference. Asher was there, standing behind his father, his face unreadable. The reporter droned on about a new product launch, but I couldn't hear it over the pounding in my chest. He looked different, older. Somehow, like the weight of his old life had settled back onto his shoulders. I wanted to believe he was happy, that I'd done the right thing. But his eyes, those storm gray eyes, looked empty. I turned away, gripping the rag so hard my knuckles whitened. Maria noticed. "You okay, kid?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, but my throat was tight. I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay since I left New York. Since I left him. That night, I broke. I pulled out my phone, not the burner I'd been using, but the old one, still in my bag, dead for months. I plugged it in, hands shaking, and powered it on. Notifications flooded in. Texts, voicemails, all from Asher. "Eli, where are you? Please, just talk to me. I don't care about the money. I need you." His voice cracked in the last one, and I felt like I'd been punched. I wanted to call him, to say I was sorry, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I went to the bar. Luke was there, like always, and this time I didn't pull away when he leaned close. We talked until closing, about nothing important: school, music, the way Chicago winters made you forget what warmth felt like. He walked me back to the motel, and when he kissed me, I let it happen. It was easier than feeling the hole in my chest. But when he asked to come inside, I shook my head. "I'm not ready," I said, and he didn't push. Just smiled, sad and knowing, and left. The next day, I quit the diner. I couldn't stay in Chicago, not when every corner reminded me of what I'd lost. I bought a bus ticket to Seattle, another city I didn't know, another chance to disappear. The ride was long, the seats uncomfortable, but I didn't care. I needed distance, not just from Asher, but from the version of myself that loved him too much to stay. Seattle was wet, green, alive in a way Chicago wasn't. I found a job at a bookstore, shelving novels and avoiding eye contact. The owner, an older woman named Ruth, had a sharp tongue but kind eyes. She didn't ask about my past, just handed me a stack of books and told me to get to work. I liked it there: the quiet, the smell of paper, the way stories let me escape my own. But Asher followed me, not in person, but in my head. I'd see a book he'd like, some dense philosophy text he'd pretend to understand, and my chest would ache. I kept writing the letters, though I'd stopped hiding them under the mattress. They were in a notebook now, pages filled with words I'd never say out loud. "I saw you on TV today. You look like you belong there. I hope you're happy, even if it kills me." One night, Ruth caught me writing. I slammed the notebook shut, but she just raised an eyebrow. "Whoever they are," she said, "they're not worth all that pain." I didn't answer. She didn't know Asher, didn't know how he'd made me feel alive for the first time in years. She didn't know I'd left to save him, not to hurt him. Then, a month into Seattle, I saw him. Not on TV, not in my head, but him. Across the street, stepping out of a black car, his coat collar up against the rain. My heart stopped. Asher, in Seattle, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. I ducked behind a shelf, my pulse racing. Had he found me? How? I hadn't told anyone where I was going, hadn't used my real name. But there he was, scanning the street like he was searching for something. For me. I slipped out the back door, my breath hitching. I couldn't face him. Not now. Not when I'd finally started to convince myself I could live without him. But as I ran, the rain soaking through my jacket, I knew the truth. I'd never stop loving him. And that was the problem. Seattle's rain was relentless, chasing me as I stumbled through alleys, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. Asher was here, in my city, My escape, unraveling everything I tried to build. I didn't know how he'd found me, but the sight of him tired, determined, still heartbreakingly beautiful tore open wounds I thought were healing. I hid in a coffee shop, not unlike the one where we'd met. The irony wasn't lost on me. I ordered a black coffee, no sugar, and sat in the corner, hood up, watching the door. Every chime of the bell made me flinch, expecting him to walk in. He didn't. Hours passed, and the rain slowed to a drizzle. I told myself he was gone, that it was a coincidence, that he wasn't looking for me. But I knew better. Asher didn't give up. Not on his father's empire. Not on me. I went back to the bookstore the next day, jumpy, scanning every customer. Ruth noticed. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, stacking books. I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. I couldn't tell her about Asher, about the billionaire who'd thrown away his life for a nobody like me. She wouldn't understand why I ran, why I couldn't face him. I barely understood it myself. That night, I wrote another letter. "I saw you today. You looked like you were searching for something. I hope it wasn't me." The words felt like a lie even as I wrote them. I wanted him to find me, to pull me back into his orbit. But I was terrified of what it would cost him. His father's approval, his future, his place in a world I'd never fit into. I tore the page out, crumpled it, and threw it in the trash. Days passed, and I didn't see him again. I started to relax, telling myself he'd given up, gone back to New York. But then, on a quiet Tuesday, he walked into the bookstore. I was shelving novels, my back to the door, when I heard his voice slow, rough, saying my name. "Eli." I froze, the book in my hand slipping to the floor. I turned, and there he was, rain-soaked, eyes locked on mine like I was the only thing in the world. "Why?" he asked, stepping closer. His voice cracked, raw with hurt. "Why did you leave?" I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The other customers faded away, and it was just us, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. Ruth appeared, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" she asked, eyeing Asher. I nodded, barely, and she backed off, but her gaze lingered. I had to. I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "You were losing everything." Asher's jaw tightened, and he closed the distance between us, his hands hovering like he wanted to touch me but didn't dare. "I lost you," he said. "That's worse." My chest ached, and I wanted to fall into him, to let him hold me like he used to. But I stepped back. "You don't get it," I said. "I'm not worth it." He flinched, like I'd hit him. "Don't say that." His voice was fierce, almost angry. "You're worth everything." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "Your father, your life," he cut me off, grabbing my hand. "I don't want it without you." His touch was electric, pulling me back to those summer nights in New York, to the way he'd made me believe I was enough. I pulled away, my heart breaking all over again. "I can't," I said, and ran, out the back door, into the rain. I heard him call my name, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not when I knew what staying would do to him. I moved again. Portland this time. Another city. Another job tending at a quiet place downtown. I thought distance would help, that leaving Seattle would erase him. But he was in every song on the radio, every stranger's smile. I stopped writing letters. They hurt too much. Instead, I worked, drank, tried to forget. But forgetting Asher was like forgetting how to breathe. Then, one night, a customer left a newspaper on the bar. A small article. Buried in the business section, Langston Tech Air engaged. My stomach dropped. There was a photo Asher, smiling tightly, next to a woman I didn't know. She was polished, perfect, the kind of person his father would approve of. I stared at the picture, my hands shaking. He'd moved on, just like I wanted. So why did it feel like the world was ending? I didn't sleep that night. I walked the city, the rain my only company, and wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. I'd left to save him. But what if I'd only broken us both? Portland's fog clung to me like regret, heavy and inescapable. I'd been here a month, pouring drinks, dodging questions, trying to outrun the image of Asher's engagement photo. His smile in that grainy newspaper haunted me forced. Nothing like the one he'd given me under New York street lamps. I told myself it was for the best. He was back where he belonged, with someone who fit his world. But the thought of him with her, with anyone, carved a hole in me I couldn't fill. The bar was my refuge. A dimly lit place called the Anchor where regulars nursed their drinks and their secrets. I liked it no one cared who I was, as long as the beer was cold. But every night, as I wiped down the counter, I'd catch myself looking at the door, half expecting Asher to walk through. He didn't. Of course he didn't. He was getting married, building a life I had no place in. One night, a regular named Sam Older, grizzled, with a voice like gravel, noticed my distraction. "You running from something, kid?" he asked, swirling his whiskey. I shrugged, polishing a glass I'd already cleaned. "Aren't we all?" He chuckled, but his eyes were sharp, like he saw through me. "Some things you can't outrun," he said, and left it at that. I hated how right he was. I stopped writing letters, but I couldn't stop thinking about Asher. I'd lie awake in my tiny rented room, replaying our last moments in Seattle. The way he'd looked at me, hurt and desperate, begging me to stay. The way I'd run, because running was all I knew. I wondered if he hated me now, if he'd told his fiancée about the barista who broke his heart. I wondered if he still loved me. Then, one rainy evening, everything changed. I was closing up, the bar empty except for the hum of the jukebox, when the door swung open. I didn't look up, just called out, "We're closed." No response. I turned, and there he was, Asher, soaked to the bone, his eyes locked on mine. My heart stopped. He looked different, thinner, shadows under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in months. But he was still him, still the man who'd made me believe in love. "Eli," he said, his voice raw. "I found you." I gripped the counter, my knees weak. "You shouldn't be here," I said, but the words sounded hollow. He stepped closer, the rain dripping from his coat onto the floor. "I had to," he said. "I can't do this without you." I shook my head, my throat tight. "You're engaged, Asher." I saw the paper. His face twisted, like I'd slapped him. "It's not real," he said. "It's what my father wanted." I called it off. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Called it off. For me. Again. "You can't keep doing this," I said, my voice breaking. "You can't keep throwing your life away." He moved closer, close enough that I could smell the rain on him, feel the heat of him. "You're not my life," he said, fierce. "You're my home." And then he kissed me. Desperate. Hungry. Like he was drowning and I was air. I kissed him back. Because God help me. I couldn't not. His hands were in my hair. Mine clutching his shirt. And for a moment, the world disappeared. It was just us. Like it used to be. But reality crashed in. I pulled back. Breathless. Shaking. This doesn't change anything. I said. I'm still not enough. His eyes burned into mine. You're everything, he said. And I wanted to believe him. But fear was louder. I turned away. My hands shaking. Go home. Asher. I said. Please. He didn't move. Just stood there. Watching me. I'll wait. He said finally. As long as it takes. And then he was gone. The door swinging shut behind him. Leaving me alone with the jukebox and my regrets. I didn't sleep that night. I walked the city. The fog wrapping around me like a shroud. I thought about what Sam had said. About things you can't outrun. I thought about Asher. About the life he was willing to give up. Again and again. For me. And for the first time, I wondered if I was wrong to keep running. If maybe, just maybe, I could be enough. The Portland rain didn't let up. And neither did Asher. He didn't come back to the bar. But I felt him everywhere in the city's pulse. In the quiet moments when I let myself remember. I told myself to keep moving. To leave again. But something was shifting. For the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to run. I kept working at the Anchor. Pouring drinks. Dodging Sam's knowing looks. He'd seen Asher that night. Had watched me fall apart after he left. You gonna keep running, kid? He asked one evening, leaning on the bar. I didn't answer. Just handed him his whiskey. But his words stuck. Like a splinter I couldn't pull out. A week later, I found a note slipped under the bar's door. No name. Just Asher's handwriting. Neat and deliberate. I'm staying at the Heathman. Room 412. When you're ready. My hands shook as I read it. He was still here. Still waiting. Still betting on me when I'd given him every reason not to. I folded the note. Tucked it in my pocket. And tried to pretend it didn't change everything. But it did. I started noticing things, how the bar's jukebox played songs Asher loved. How the rain sounded like his laugh. I stopped fighting the memories. Letting them wash over me. The night we'd snuck into a closed museum. Giggling like kids as we wandered through dark galleries. The way he'd hold my hand. Unafraid. Even when people stared. The promise he'd made. Whispered against my skin, I'll choose you every time. I didn't go to the Heathman. Not yet. I needed time. Needed to figure out if I could be the person he believed I was. But I stopped planning my next escape. I started talking to Sam. Not about Asher. But about Mimi Mom. My fears. The way I'd always felt like I didn't belong anywhere. He listened. Nodding. And when I was done, he said, sounds like you've got a home waiting. If you're brave enough to claim it. Brave. I'd never thought of myself that way. I'd survived fights. Loss. A world that didn't want people like me but bravery. That was Asher. Walking away from billions. From his father's shadow. For a chance at us. I wasn't sure I could match that. But I wanted to try. One night, after closing, I pulled out the note again. Room 412. I could see him there. Waiting. Probably pacing like he always did when he was nervous. I could go to him. Tell him I was sorry. That I loved him. But what if I hurt him again? What if I wasn't enough? I stood there. The note crumpled in my fist. Until the rain stopped and the sky cleared. The next day, I went to the Heathman. My heart was in my throat as I rode the elevator, the note burning a hole in my pocket. I knocked on 412, and when he opened the door, I forgot how to breathe. Asher looked at me like I was a miracle, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. "Eli," he said, and that was all it took. I stepped forward, into his arms, and let myself fall. We talked for hours, the words spilling out me fear, his pain, the months apart. He told me about the engagement, how it was his father's idea, a last-ditch effort to control him. "I couldn't do it," he said, his hand in mine. "Not when I love you." I kissed him then, slow and sure, and for the first time, I believed I could stay. But life isn't a fairy tale. The next morning, his father called. I heard only Asher's side sharp, angry, final. When he hung up, his face was pale. "He's giving me one last chance," he said. "Come back, or I'm out for good." I froze, the old fear creeping in. "What did you say?" I asked. He looked at me, steady, certain. I told him I'm done. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was crazy, but he kissed me before I could. "You're worth it," he said, and this time, I let myself believe him. We made plans, not big ones. Not yet, but small, real ones. A life together, not in New York spotlight, but somewhere quiet. Ours. We left Portland together, not running this time, but choosing. Asher rented a car, and we drove north. No destination, just the open road and each other. The world felt lighter, like the weight of my fear had finally lifted. We talked, laughed, held hands over the gear shift, and for the first time, I let myself imagine a future. We ended up in a small coastal town in Washington, all salt air and cedar trees. It was nothing like New York, nothing like the life Asher was born into. We found a cheap apartment above a bakery, the kind of place that smelled like cinnamon and second chances. Asher got a job at a local tech startup, not as a billionaire heir, but as a coder, working for the love of it. I went back to making coffee, but this time it felt different. It wasn't a dead end. It was a beginning. We built a life, piece by piece. Mornings spent tangled in bed. Evenings cooking terrible dinners we'd laugh through. We'd walk the beach at dusk, his arm around me, and I'd marvel at how simple it was. How right. But the past wasn't done with us. Asher's father didn't give up easily. Letters arrived, first offers, then threats. Come back, or lose everything. Asher burned them, his jaw tight. But I saw the toll it took. He'd chosen me, but the cost was real. One night, we fought. It was stupid, something about dishes. Or maybe it was the way I caught him staring at his phone, at an email from his father's lawyer. "Why don't you just go back?" I snapped, fear masquerading as anger. "You'd be happier." He looked at me, hurt flashing in his eyes. "Is that what you think?" He asked. "That I'd be happier without you." I didn't answer, just stormed out, the night air cold against my skin. I walked for hours, the waves crashing in the distance, and realized I was doing it again, pushing him away, expecting him to leave. When I got back, he was on the couch, waiting. "I'm not going anywhere," he said before I could speak. "Not unless you tell me you don't love me." I couldn't say it, because it wasn't true. I crossed the room, kissed him, and we held each other until the fight felt like a bad dream. But the world kept pressing in. A reporter found us, sniffing for a story. Billionaire son living in obscurity with barista lover. Asher laughed it off, but I saw the strain in his eyes. His father's influence was long, and the whispers followed Yuzenline. In the town's gossip, in the way people looked at us. I started to wonder if I'd been right all along, if I was dragging him down. Then, one morning, a package arrived. No return address, just a thick envelope with Asher's name. Inside was a legal document, his father's will. Rewritten. Asher was out. Completely. No inheritance. No stake in Langston Tech. Just a note. You made your choice. Asher read it. His face blank. Then set it aside. It's done, he said, and pulled me close. But I felt the weight of it. The finality. I'd cost him everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside him, listening to his steady breathing, and made a decision. I couldn't let him lose any more. I loved him too much for that. So I started planning. Not to run this time, but to fight. For him. For us. I'd go to New York. Face his father. Make him see that Asher deserved better than ultimatums and empty promises. The next morning, I told Asher. He shook his head. Fierce. No. We're done with him. But I held his face. Looked into those storm-gray eyes. I'm not running. I said. I'm fighting. For you. He kissed me. Hard. And for the first time, I felt like I was enough. We drove to New York, the city looming like a challenge. I wasn't sure what I'd say to Charles Langston, but I knew I'd say it. For Asher. For the life we were building. For the love I was finally brave enough to claim. New York hit us like a tidal wave, bright. Loud. Unforgiving. The city hadn't changed. But I had. I wasn't the scared barista running from love anymore. I was here for Asher. To face the man who tried to tear us apart. Charles Langston's office was at the top of a glass tower. All steel and power. A world away from our small-town life. Asher held my hand in the elevator. His grip tight. His eyes steady. You don't have to do this, he said. I squeezed his hand. Yes, I do. The receptionist led us to a boardroom, where Charles waited. He was older than I'd imagined, his face carved with lines of control and disappointment. He didn't stand, just gestured to the chairs across from him. Asher, he said, then looked at me, his eyes cold. And you must be the reason my son threw away his future. I bristled. But Asher spoke first. His voice calm but firm. My future's with him. Charles laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. You think love pays the bills. You're nothing without this family. I felt Asher tense. But I leaned forward. My voice steady. He's more than you'll ever know. I said. He's kind. Brave. And he chose me when you gave him nothing but ultimatums. Charles's eyes narrowed. But I didn't stop. You don't get to decide his worth. He does. The room was silent. The air thick with tension. Charles leaned back, studying me. Then Asher. You're serious about this? He said. Not a question. Asher nodded. I've never been more serious. Charles's jaw tightened. And for a moment, I thought he'd throw us out. But then he sighed. A sound heavy with resignation. You're my son, he said. But you're not my heir. Not anymore. Asher didn't flinch. I don't need your money, he said. I need him. Charles looked at me again. And I saw something shift, maybe respect. Maybe defeat. Then go, he said. Live your life. We stood, and as we walked out, I felt Asher's hand in mine. Solid. Real. We'd won. Not his father's approval, but our freedom. Back in Washington, our life grew stronger. The bakery apartment became home, filled with laughter, love, and the smell of coffee. Asher coded. I poured drinks. And we built something real. Something ours. The world still whispered about the billionaire who gave it all up. About the barista who stole his heart, but we didn't care. We had each other. One evening, on the beach, Asher stopped walking. The sun was setting, painting the sky gold and pink. He turned to me, his eyes soft, and pulled a ring from his pocket. Not flashy, just simple. Silver. Perfect. Eli Carter, he said, his voice shaking. Will you marry me? I laughed, tears in my eyes, and pulled him close. Yes. I whispered. Yes. We didn't have a big wedding. Just us. A few friends. The ocean as our witness. I wore a borrowed suit. He wore his heart on his sleeve. And when we said, I do, it felt like the world finally made sense. I'd run from him. From love. From myself. But I'd found my way back. And in his arms, I found my home. Years later, we're still here. In our small town. Living a life we chose. Asher's startup is thriving. Not for billions, but for passion. I opened a coffee shop. Named it Storm for his eyes. We fight. We laugh. We love. And every day, I'm grateful I stopped running. Because love, real love, isn't about money or power. It's about choosing each other. Again and again. No matter what the world throws at you. And as I look at Asher now, asleep beside me, his hand in mine, I know I'd disappear 1,000 times if it meant finding my way back to him. Because he left his billionaire life for me. And I'd give up everything to be his.